Is there such a thing as a timeless enemy? There is no such thing. And there never has been. And the reason is that our enemies are human beings like us.
Damn!
Welcome to Solid Selection. My name is Draven Ray, and this is the channel where I scream into the void and hope the void answers. Today we're going to be talking about something that legitimately keeps me up at night. What is likely the most realistic apocalyptic scenario in my opinion. Y2K mixed with a hefty dose of nuclear winter and a dash of cosmic judgment and thrown in. Or what is known as a Carrington event. For those not aware, all of what I'm about to say has happened more than once and we are overdue. Once upon a time in 1859, when folks were just enjoying the quiet hum, smog, child labor, or just straight up slavery of Industrial Revolution era life, boom! The sun decides to hit the planet with the most powerful geomagnetic storm in recorded history. This all kicked off on September 1st when British astronomer Richard Carrington was minding his own business, staring at the sun. As one does, man was using a shaded telescope. He was a professional. He bore witness to a massive solar flare, and I mean big. To put this in perspective, the Earth is a grape, and this one individual flare was a basketball with the potential to cook us like a marshmallow over a propane torch. A hit like this coming directly at us would be widely considered not to be ideal. This is what smarter people than me call a CME, or a coronal mass ejection. Actually, in this case, an ultra-fast coronal mass ejection. Yes, that is the actual technical term. And it's valid. The sun is around 100 million miles from Earth. A farther distance than anyone could even hope to picture. Normally, CMEs can make that journey in just a few days, which isn't light speed, but it would be good enough for George Lucas. They are not slow. This one, however, took about 17 hours. It was literally moving fast enough that the amount of distance that it covered in a single hour would be about what you would manage if you hopped in a car right now and started driving, moving at freeway speed 24 hours a day without stopping for any reason and never needing to refill on gas for a full 11 and a half years. That begs the question then, why are we still here? And it's simple. We're fucking lucky. People don't respect how incredible this planet is. You are taking up space right now on an enormous gyroscopic engine in a very literal sense. You probably learned in grade school that the Earth has 3 layers, crust, mantle, core, but what a lot of people don't think about is that basically the entire middle layer is made of molten iron, which might not be as conductive as copper, but if you can somehow get enough of it around, you will still get voltage. Like many things, we're talking economies of scale, as in a little won't do a lot, but a lot will do a little. Despite that though, we would still have been so fucked if there weren't almost 100 million miles in between us and where this thing started. Even with that distance though, remember, this is the size of a basketball while our planet is a very squishy grape. We lived, if only by the skin of our teeth, but when the Hulk punches a planet, it doesn't need to crumble to know he means business. The first thing people noticed was the sky going absolutely bonkers. The auroras, which are normally a polite guest in the polar regions, decided to crash the party worldwide. They were visible as far south as the Caribbean. A man was reported to have read a paper while drinking a nice cup of coffee on his porch with no light except for that of the sky at 11 p.m. in Cuba. And that doesn't hold a candle to my favorite story to come out of this. So, there was this group of gold miners in the Rocky Mountains. They woke up at 1 a.m. believing it was morning and got their fire going, started getting breakfast together, realized about halfway through that it was some weird lights in the sky, and just went back to bed. They could not be bothered at all. Absolute legends. Technology took an L. Luckily, we're in the 1850s and they didn't have much in the way of electronics. As a matter of fact, the entire concept of electricity being used for anything other than medical, with heavy quotation marks, purposes, wasn't even a thing until about a century prior in 1706, because Isaac Newton was a fucking boss. And even then, it was only a reference to light waves, because he was seeing different colors while stabbing himself in the eye with a needle, as one does. And yes, I know, I want to make a video about that as well. But on topic, this wasn't just new, it was cutting edge. The light bulb didn't even exist yet, and wouldn't for another 20 years. The telegraph was invented in 1844, just 16 years before our story began. Already though, the march of progress continues on, as it's wont to do, and Western Union Telegraph Company had created lines across America. with similar projects occurring in Europe. And yeah, those got fried, literally. As in those same brand new lines would spontaneously catch fire like the wrath of God at man's hubris. That's a direct quote, by the way, from one of the operators at the time. It was the same story for the machines themselves, going up in smoke all thanks to something called anti-resonance, which is way too complicated for me to get into in this video. Of course, because of this, any operator with his machine still plugged in would get electric shocks from his equipment at best, and could be seriously injured at worst. These were not large machines, about the size of a medium-sized book, but I dare you, go put your hand on a brass rail that you have to regularly apply pressure to when there is so much energy flowing through it that the power lines themselves are literally catching on fire. We have at least one reported case between two operators in Boston, Massachusetts and Portland, Oregon, that the telegraph still worked, and arguably worked better, after being unplugged, because the storm was generating its own power. To me, this isn't just another story from history, though, and here's why. If the Carrington event happened today, it would be catastrophic. We're talking global blackouts, satellites, or anything really beyond our magnetosphere tumbling out of orbit and hopefully burning up in the atmosphere. Banking systems would collapse, and the stock market would crash harder than 2008 and the Great Depression combined. Forget about GPS, forget about the internet, and worst of all, forget about random wannabe YouTubers that run around in video games and rant about cool shit. Who would want to go without that? Modern civilization, though, would short circuit. When I was a kid, I once got super upset about the developments that had happened in my mom and grandma's time, before I was even around to witness it. Thinking that there's no possible way that anything as incredible as the microwave, cell phone, would be invented in my lifetime. I would never get to see the first moon landing as it happened, or know a world before modern appliances only to see them introduced. I went to my mom, and she laughed at me. My 5-year-old self couldn't possibly understand how wrong I was. Let's take a step back here, and explore what is in my opinion one of the best thought experiments of all time, created in 2007 and called The Witch in the iPhone. So imagine something for me. A powerfully magical but extremely dickish witch decides to cast a spell on all of humanity. We don't know why, we don't know where she or he is, or if they have any motives at all. All we know for certain is that with a single swoop of their wand, they restore the Earth to its pre-human 200,000 BC state. All technology and infrastructure just bamps out of existence in an instant. What's left are billions of naked humans standing on grassy plains, in forests and swamps, on tundra, and in deserts in the exact spots where their cities and villages were just a second ago, so long as they were standing on ground level when it happened. The humans themselves are unchanged. Each person knows everything they know right now. The only thing that could be considered technological is a single piece of paper with a note written on it, for each man, woman, and child. In their hands, wrapped around their leg, one woman finds it stuck to her face. On this piece of paper is a note in their language that says, "I've cast a spell on all of humanity. Everything will remain as is until someone manages to create a fully featured and perfectly functional iPhone 16 Pro. As soon as that happens, the spell will be reversed, and the world as you knew it will instantly reappear." 1 minute later, the notes all vanish. So here's the question, how would this play out? The only clarification is that the iPhone created has to be good enough to pass as a new iPhone 16 Pro sold in an Apple store today. So humans submit the iPhone to the witch, and he or she time travels back to 2025 right before they cast the spell. They take it to an Apple store, and say they found it on the table out of its box. The Apple employees inspect it and test it out, and if they decide that it's fully functional and good as new, then the spell is reversed. Anything less than that, if for any reason the Apple employees don't feel the phone is ready to sell as new, the spell returns. The more I've thought about this, and I probably have thought about it too much, admittedly, the shittier I realize the spell would be for all of us. I, for one, would be standing naked in a tundra, which is covered in snow at the moment, surrounded by 500,000 other people within a 30-mile radius. There isn't enough water for that many people because my area as it sits now is fed by 2 aquifers that wouldn't be able to be accessed reliably without modern water treatment facilities. In the old days, most humans lived near rivers or lakes, but that was when the world population was a fraction of what it is now. If the goal is survival, the only option for travel would be the good old Chevrolets. My standard walking speed is 3.4 miles per hour. If I survived, it would take approximately 43 days, hiking 8 hours a day through extremely rough terrain to reach the nearest coast. The next problem would of course be food. Do you know how to farm? Probably not. Neither do I. How about farmers? Do they know how to farm without any equipment or farm-ready fields? Probably not too well. We'd all be hunting and gathering, and unlike even our hunter-gatherer ancestors who had others to teach them and presumably a clan to rely on, all of this is setting aside the fact that we live in a society that has been divided by technology for the majority of most of our lives, and allowed us to learn so many skills with ease and usually for free. None of us know shit. Our self-reliance would become our greatest weakness. The best option for a teacher would be the homeless guy talking to a CIA agent down at the gas station. I'm confident in my ability to nap a rock into a rough approximation of a spearhead and take down a raccoon or a goose, but a deer, even a rabbit, anything faster than me would be impossible. What kind of vegetation in Nebraska is edible if the cornfields disappear to be replaced by prairie grass? Would it even matter? Due to population issues, disease and sickness would quickly become a staple, everyday occurrence. This is unavoidable. Weakened immune systems would desperately struggle as diseases that we have been vaccinated and inoculated against from childhood run rampant. A million typhoid Marys all appearing at once in a completely helpless populace. How do we decide who's in charge? Is government even a possibility? Or is anarchy that slowly or quickly devolves into feudal law become the norm? If there is a centralized system of government, how do we get that information to everyone? While all this is happening, we'd have to hope really hard that somewhere in the forest that used to be Cupertino, California, the naked, spear-wielding employees of Apple have the ability to find each other. Where hope beyond hope, they have the knowledge in their heads without the boon of the internet or any of the thousands of hours of famously patchwork code that has been written to manage every Apple device since the iPhone 7 and held together with the equivalent of glue and duct tape. I have no clue how they do it, but the challenge at hand is unthinkable. How many different kinds of raw materials go into making an iPhone? In what parts of the earth are they found, and how deep underground? Who, at Apple or elsewhere, even knows this information? If you somehow figure that out, how do you get those materials? You need mines, which it would be almost impossible to dig without serious construction equipment. You then need mining equipment, and miners who know how to use it. Even if you had all the right raw materials, they come from different parts of the earth. How do you transport them to one place? If they need to cross oceans, how the hell do you do that? Then you have to manufacture the iPhone, not just the cutting and shaping and polishing of the parts, but the assembly of the incredibly tiny transistors on the phone's processor chip, the graphics card, the camera, the fingerprint sensor, and a million other parts and pieces that people like you or I will most likely never need to know the name of. You don't have any kind of equipment to do that either, or the equipment to make that equipment, or the equipment to mine the materials to make that equipment, or the mines to get those materials, or the equipment to build those mines. No one at Apple has any idea of how to do any of this. Some of the answers to this giant puzzle are in the brains of living humans, but those people are scattered around the Earth. Most of the answers are only known by today's computers and machines, none of which exist anymore. And all those people who do know pieces of that critical information about the iPhone puzzle are currently dying of hunger and thirst and disease and cannibalism and getting speared to death by nearby people who want whatever food they do have. How do they write what they know down? By painstakingly etching it into slabs of rock with other pieces of rock? Drawing it out in blood, or hopefully charcoal? By explaining it orally? If that information is lost, it sets the whole process back much farther. We can't assume friendly competition during any of this, of course. If the current state of the world has taught us anything, it's that a lot of people will decide that there's no chance of the iPhone being made within their lifetimes, and because of this, they will stop working to support the mission, only being concerned with fending for themselves and their families. And who could blame them in this case? Some might actually want to kill those with key information, because they decide that it's better if a new civilization is constructed as long as they stand at the top of whatever burning pyre they manage to build. But however it shakes out, wouldn't be a great time. Zooming back into the Carrington event, the question we should be asking is, could this happen again? And the short answer is, unfortunately, yes. The longer answer is yes, and the question isn't even if, it's when. We know that the sun is on an 11-year activity cycle, and massive CMEs are always a possibility. In fact, in 2012, Earth barely dodged a solar storm of a similar magnitude. If it had hit us, we'd probably still be rebooting society, which is actually hilarious to me because 2012 was the last time I was actively worried about any other kind of apocalypse. Space weather agencies are of course keeping an eye on the sun with satellites and early warning system, but let's be real, if another Carrington level event happens, our best defense is crossing our fingers and hoping the sun is in a good mood that day. Anyway, for those watching this instead of just listening in, first of all, thank you. And also, in previous videos, this is where I've gone into what's going on in the background in the world of Skyrim while the story is being told. I've been advised that that doesn't add anything to the content. If anyone would like to hear more of that, please let me know. But otherwise, we're going to go directly into the wrap-up. So what have we learned today? The sun is not to be messed with. The Victorians accidentally invented solar-powered telegraphs. Kind of. And because I'm trying to prove to the world my lack of tact and business sense, to end this on a cheerful note, if the Carrington event happened today, we'd all be dead most likely, as every nuclear warhead on the planet detonated at once. If you found this breakdown of my nightmares entertaining, you should subscribe, and drop a comment on how long you survived without the internet. Thank you for watching Solid Selection. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep in touch with your friends and neighbors. Just in case.